Good evening and welcome to the 2021 Division 19 President-elect Town Hall. I am Tatana Olson, the current President-elect, and I will be serving as your moderator tonight. Over the next hour, you will have the opportunity to hear from our two President-elect candidates, Bruce Crow and Joe Troiani, on a variety of issues relevant to Division 19 members. It is our hope that the discussion tonight will help inform your decision when it comes time to cast your ballot. So without further ado, let's get started. A coin toss is used to determine the order in which the candidates will answer questions, and each candidate will have the same amount of time. Before we get started with the questions, I'd like each candidate to briefly introduce themselves. So Bruce, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Hi, I'm Bruce Crow. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been a member of Division 19 since 1982. So I was introduced to military psychology via the Health Professional Scholarship Program in graduate school, came on active duty for internship, and stayed to the extent that the law allowed. And after 30 years, left active duty. Spent another 5 years as a Department of Army civilian, and am currently now working for the Department of VA in the suicide prevention program.
Thanks, Bruce. Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe Troiani, also a long-term member of Division 19. I'm currently Associate Professor in Clinical Psychology and the founding director of military psychology programs at Yale University. We have a military psychology emphasis in addition to a master's online in military psychology. I'm also retired United States Navy, started my career in the Navy in the reserves, enlisted, got commissioned and retired as the rank of commander. And in the Navy, I drilled primarily in Washington, D.C., the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I was what they call a 1635. I was a Naval Intelligence Officer. Past president of the Illinois Psychological Association, where I maintained involvement for a good 15 years, and currently on the board of the Illinois Association of Prescribing Psychologists.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. All right, we'll get started with our questions. So the first question will go to you, Bruce. It's what knowledge, skills, and experiences do you bring to the position that would make you a successful president, and why do you want to be president? And you will have 5 minutes to answer both questions.
All right, first I'd like to thank Tatana Olson and Ethan Bannar and his team for coordinating this event. And I'd like to thank anyone who spends a little time watching the town hall. I'd also like to acknowledge my fellow candidate, Joe Troiani, for his contributions to Division 19 over the years and his willingness to continue in a leadership role. So to answer the questions, I don't think I'm uniquely qualified, but I believe I'm capable of leading the division. There are many members who have served well in this position and other members who will be asked to step forward in future years. I've been serving on the executive committee for the past 3 years as member at large. That's given me a chance to work on specific projects and observe the governance side of the division. I now have a much better appreciation that running for president means a 3-year commitment to serving the division, starting as president-elect and continuing as on through past president. I think a successful president represents a successful team. And we're fortunate to have very committed members who are serving as committee chairs, elected officers, and volunteers for various projects. I think fundamentally, the president needs to be available, be attuned to the needs of the organization, and be prepared to react to unexpected events. I've had the good fortune of many years' experience in military leadership roles and have become a little adept at getting to the heart of an issue, developing options for solutions, and then getting buy-in from the right people to solve the problem. This has worked pretty well in the past, and I think will likely work well in the future. So the question about why do I want to be president? Well, I've always been fond of Erik Erikson's theory of developmental stages. And within this framework, I think I'm still within the generativity versus stagnation stage, where the main psychological question centers on, did I make a contribution to the world? Military psychology has provided me an extremely fulfilling career, including 30 years in uniform and 5 years as an Army civilian. But I can't say I've always done my part as well or as often as I could have. To that end, I think serving in a leadership role for Division 19 would provide an excellent chance to share some of the benefits that I've enjoyed as a military psychologist. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. So Joe, same questions to you, and you will also have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, first a note of appreciation for all those involved in putting this together. And it's a wonderful opportunity to give back. I've worked as a clinician in the field for 50 years, and I would have to say the last 20 years, I've had a real passion for military psychology. You know, part of it was driven from my own experiences, the loss of friends post 9/11, and seeing that the gap exists, that is a gap with clinicians being well trained in the area of military psychology. So part of my pursuit, of course, as I mentioned, was to develop those programs. And that's probably one of the driving forces of my interest in military psychology in Division 19. One of the things that I could bring to the table is primarily my administrative and leadership skills, including my political advocacy skills. I didn't mention it earlier. My background included such positions as an administrator of psychiatric hospitals, and for the last 28 years, in addition to Adler, Director of Behavioral Health for the Public Health Department. In fact, I was hoping to retire this year, but COVID-19 was a game changer, so I'm committed for an additional year. Leadership experience is primarily coming out of my role with the Illinois Psychological Association, moving up the positions from treasurer to secretary, and finally to president, and getting involved in advocacy. And that was probably a most significant role, developing collaborative relationships, advocating for prescription privileging, and of course, after an absence of any movement in 20 years, we were able to get RXP passed in Illinois. And I continue working with the likes of Beth Rom Reiner and that organization to bring that news to other states and to also work the political system. But in my leadership style is very much collaboration, team building, and creating kind of a collective consciousness in terms of the direction of the organization on the short run as well as a long run basis. So that's what I have to share with you for now.
Thanks very much, Joe. All right, so the next question, Joe, we'll start with you. What is your vision for Division 19 over the next 3 years? And you will have 3 minutes for this question.
There are a couple of existing initiatives that I would definitely support, as well as some new initiatives. One is building off the success of the 2019 and the 2020 Regional Research Symposia, and now planning with the 2021. I would continue with these and expanded research symposias, exploring the use of virtual RRSs as well as a continuing education program. Also, I would support and see the further development of think tanks. I know right now we have one on moral injury as well as one on academics. I promise to engage the membership with the division to develop these as well as other potential think tanks. Also, the development of military psychology courses and curriculum. We've been able to achieve that at the graduate level, at the master's level, but I also see at the undergraduate level. As we look to the future and encouraging individuals to come into the military as civilians or active duty, providing that education would be absolutely critical. Also, I think we are, as an organization, in a position to define military cultural competency for the profession as well as the field for behavioral health. There are many practitioners out there working with those who are serving, and we really saw the gap with members of the National Guard and Reserves, of which 42% of the fighting force in Iraq and Afghanistan were members of that community, coming back to their community with the behavioral health services having a difficult time in terms of responding to their needs. So the area of military cultural competency is also an important area. I'm very excited. I joined the committee on the history of Division 19, developing more information, collecting the materials that are out there, and that I think would also be important to further encourage and understand who we are. After all, it's our 75th year anniversary. And I think the division has a lot to be proud of. And in some ways, Division 19 is kind of the best kept secret. And I see that especially with students coming in off of military service, going into a doctorate program with the idea of working in the VA system. So those are some of the things that I would see building off the vision of others, building off the success of some of the things that have been implemented in the past 2 or 3 administrations. And then finally, the branding of military psychology. One of the things I've discovered, people really have a misunderstanding what military psychology is about. And how do we brand that? And how do we get that name to our colleagues, that information to our colleagues, as well as the general public? I think would also be a critical, if not a key component.
Thank you, Joe. So same question for you, Bruce. What is your vision for Division 19 over the next 3 years?
I'm going to describe my vision in somewhat general terms. I don't think the division is in need of a major shift in focus or restructuring or significant changes to our bylaws or operating practices. The division is stable, and we've implemented some very well-received initiatives in the past few years that I agree are worth strengthening. I do think military psychology benefits when we have strong presence where we work and live. The American public is very appreciative of those who serve in the military, and military psychologists can be justifiably proud of their service, whether they've served just a few years or a full career. I think there are many great stories that need to be told that illustrate the dedication to service that military psychologists exemplify. We have strong interest among students, which helps establish presence within universities. And no doubt, many of our members are active in county or state psychological associations and other professional organizations. I think we may want to consider something like an ambassador initiative that helps recognize and promote the great work of our uniformed and civilian members. In other words, I'd like to see the division continue its steady course with expanded visibility on the contributions, not only in healthcare, but the full range that our members bring to the military. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Our next question will start with you. What are the top 3 initiatives you would like to accomplish during your tenure as president? And you'll have 3 minutes for this question.
Well, this sort of relates to the question about vision for Division 19. But I think the top 3 priority areas for the division can be summed up by consolidate, communicate, advocate. And what I mean by consolidate is the division has started some new initiatives that I think members would like to see continued and perhaps expanded. Now, I'll mention just a couple. The executive committee recently approved establishing a nonprofit foundation that will help provide a more stable means for managing the division's finances. And it'll also open more opportunities for sponsor support. Getting that up and running will take some dedicated effort over the next few years, but it will be vital to our financial stability. We have a leadership initiative geared for earlier career members that serves as a postgraduate focus on leader development within a military context. This is consistent with positioning our members to serve in leadership roles and learn from the experience of expert consultants and senior division members. These initiatives are examples of our need to invest time and resources to grow and sustain as a way to consolidate our gains. What I mean by communicate is that we're doing very well in many areas of communicating with our members. I think we have other opportunities we may want to explore. Our communications committee and students just revamped the division website with a very polished and professional appearance. But beyond the look of it, I think we can expand the functionality as a portal so that members can have a wider range of access to military psychology resources. We have had an active presence with Facebook, Twitter, and our listserv, but we may want to consider a wider range of social media. Our military psychology podcast network is now producing episodes providing another information source about timely topics. We may want to look at other ways to push out brief topical media to strategically inform target audiences. What I mean by advocate is we really don't have much experience in this area, but I think we would do well to create a strategic advocacy agenda and prepare ourselves for proactive advocacy. We would probably need to invest a little in training and consultation, but I think there would be good payoff if we learn to be effective in various forms of advocacy. So, consolidate, communicate, advocacy sums up my view of priority actions for the division.
Thank you, Bruce. So, Joe, the same question for you. What are the top 3 initiatives you would like to accomplish during your tenure as president?
Well, first of all, number 1 would be to achieve financial sustainability for the division. And this would include the development of additional revenue streams and, of course, and this is critical, the development of the foundation. Secondly, I see the importance through advocacy, increasing the visibility about the division, both within the profession of psychology, the general public, as well as the behavioral health profession. Those 3 particular arenas, within and among our own colleagues, within the profession, as well as the general public. Also, we need to promote the rich history of the divisions and its contributions. We have a story that needs to be told. We have incredible contributions that have made that maybe within the division, they're well known, but outside the division, even within the profession, they're not well known. And I think this would be very important. It was interesting. I'll just use an example. We established within the Illinois Psychological Association the military psychology section a couple of years ago. And we got off the ground just around the time the entire crisis hit with the New York Times article and questions regarding interrogations and the role of psychologists. And we had a town hall at the Illinois Psychological Association annual meeting where I think, for the most part, we put a lot of the heavy criticism to rest and had the opportunity to at least have maybe 100 Illinois psychologists see what the story really was and understand the complexity of what went on. And that kind of quick response will go along with, our increased visibility and, developing those collaborative relationships and working partnerships.
Thanks very much, Joe. And we're going to start with you for the next question. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Division 19? And you will have 3 minutes.
The biggest challenges I think that we're facing today or going forward, the division defining who we are and what we do in light of the critical voices within the profession of psychology. And I'm going to take it a step further. Those critical voices within the behavioral health community as well as with the general public. Also, the promotion of a further understanding of what military psychology is. And this is all critical because I really believe we need to get beyond the Hoffman controversy or the Hoffman report. I believe the profession of psychology has moved beyond the controversy, but our critics will continue to use the report to question the profession of military psychology. And as we've seen, they've gone even beyond that with psychologists working in law enforcement or psychologists working in any area dealing with national security affairs. But I believe those would be our challenges.
Thank you very much. So Bruce, over to you. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing Division 19?
Well, for challenges, I'll mention two. Financial, and we've had some discussion about that already, but I'll expand on that a little bit. The division has enjoyed good revenue from the journal Military Psychology, but member dues alone would not be sufficient to support the division financially. And journals are becoming more open access. Libraries and institutions are becoming less willing to pay for journal access, and journals are selling fewer subscriptions. So I believe we need to prepare to transition to other sources of revenue before we find ourselves headed for a crunch with little time to react. Another challenge that I see is related to relevance. We enjoy a strong interest and membership at the student level, but we don't see the same level of interest sustained over the career span of military psychologists. I think we need to study this a bit and see what the retention patterns are and see what we can offer members as an incentive to keep them engaged with the division as they transition from student to early career and beyond.
Thank you, Bruce. We're going to start with you for the next question. How can Division 19 best advocate for research, practice, and policy that support veterans, military members, and their families? And you'll have 4 minutes for this question.
Well, I mentioned this a little already. I think Division 19 would benefit from building a sustained advocacy capability. We're asked from time to time to give an opinion or support an issue, but we've not really developed a sustained strategic advocacy approach on issues that are important to our members. In general, our advocacy would be seeking to influence those who have influence. We may want to employ a stratified approach with different strategies applied to different advocacy targets. For example, we may want to develop different strategies for government policy or legislation at the federal or state level, different strategies for advocating within APA, and yet other strategies when working with special interest organizations such as veteran serving organizations. APA itself has recently reoriented its advocacy approach, which gives us better access to an advocacy officer with whom we can partner and increase our ability to leverage that expertise. I think we may want to consider establishing an advocacy committee or division advocacy designee to map out our options for sustained advocacy actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. So Joe, over to you.
Bruce, I really like what I heard you say, and I concur with you. Advocacy, I think, is critical at this point in juncture going forward. But in addition to advocacy, as Bruce mentioned a little earlier, I think we're in a perfect position to develop collaborative relationships. One of the things that we tried with our Regional Research Symposia, for example, we invited the head of the Prickster Military Library. We also reached out to VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the American Legion. And it was very interesting. Being a member of the American Legion, they're absolutely hungry for speakers who could be talking about these various aspects. And what better person than a military psychologist? So the establishment of a speakers bureau might be part of the framework of developing an overall strategic outreach capability. Again, it would help with our visibility. It would help with the understanding of what military psychology is. And with that kind of collaboration, if support is needed at the legislative level, if support is needed in terms of addressing an issue that's being brought up regarding military psychology. We've got basically will have support and forces to muster. But then again, that's all part of an overall advocacy strategy, which also includes, again, the building of collaborative relationships.
Thanks very much, Joe. We'll start with you for the next question. What steps do you think are needed to get beyond the Hoffman report? And what are the remaining barriers to achieving that goal? And you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, I think it's very clear from my experience that those critics are going to remain critics. They're going to remain loud voices. There's a political agenda that's being pushed. It ranges from the extreme of not having military psychologists or not working with law enforcement. But to get beyond the report, I think education and outreach is needed to those that could be potential supporters of ours or those who are supporters of ours. As I mentioned, we were able to fuse quite a backlash within the Illinois Psychological Association by bringing together psychologists that served in the military, psychologists that were military psychologists, as well as those of us who were teaching military psychology. And we had a wonderful evening forum in sorting out some of the truths from some of the fictions. And in fact, a number of our critics became critical of the New York Times article in terms of how they presented this, and actually made a statement that this is flying in the face of clinical psychologists in general. I believe we need to move beyond that, but also part of moving beyond that is demonstrating that, in fact, that we've taken a serious look at this issue, that corrective measures have been taken, and that in the teaching of future psychologists, the Hoffman report is being used within the ethics courses as a way of pointing out some of the potential pitfalls in the practice of the clinical psychology within the military setting.
Thank you. Bruce, the same question for you, please.
Well, the Hoffman report was disruptive and inflicted unwarranted damage to the livelihoods and reputations of some Division 19 members. But the Hoffman report does not define Division 19, and outsiders don't define Division 19. Division 19 members define Division 19. The report was published nearly 60 years ago now and is probably increasingly viewed as an historical document about wartime events. Some division members are pursuing litigation for redress of damages based on inaccuracies and bias in the report's narrative. And this has created a pause in APA's willingness or ability to talk with us about our concerns. It actually takes a lot of time to study the Hoffman report and the issues surrounding it. The report itself is over 540 pages and takes many hours to read completely. Add to that many more hours needed to read about it and the growing rebuttal about its flaws, and we can expect that few people who aren't directly involved in it will make that effort. The result is that in the absence of information, people often form opinions based on stereotypes. And although the Hoffman report investigated APA staff and governance, it unfairly casts military psychology in a bad light. For APA, the issues in the Hoffman report are viewed in terms of ethics and human rights. Most psychologists don't work in environments where they have to deal with severe ambiguities and challenges for these issues, but many military psychologists do, and have learned valuable lessons that can inform earlier career military psychologists. Someone reading the Hoffman report will likely get the mistaken idea that military psychologists have disregard for professional ethics, which is absurd. Some of our senior members, like Sally Harvey and Mark Stahl, have done some excellent webinar training about the Hoffman report and associated issues. I'd like to look at options for maybe creating a topical series of recorded videos or other media to address relevant ethics and human rights topics encountered in military settings. A project like this could provide our members more of a roadmap for navigating difficult ethical dilemmas and inform the public about the standards and ethics of military psychology. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. This next question will start with you. What do you see as Division 19's role within the larger APA? You'll have 3 minutes for this one.
Well, I see a two-way street with APA. Division 19 is one of the original APA divisions and has provided long-standing contributions to APA in the form of science and practice of psychology. We have representation on council, and our members have served on various APA committees and task forces. Overall, APA has provided much support to Division 19, although we've had some rough spots and areas of disagreement. As psychologists, I think it's good for us to be connected with APA and connected with developments within organized psychology. Many division members have multiple connection points with APA through other divisions or state psych associations. Others have a single connection point through Division 19. In this respect, the division can give voice to member priorities that otherwise wouldn't be well communicated to APA. In turn, the division works to keep up with the evolution of APA and communicate that to our members. We are somewhat unique in that we are one of the divisions that is also a standalone organization as the Society for Military Psychology. This gives us added flexibility and ability to maintain an identity apart from APA. But on balance, I think it benefits us to be a division of APA and continue our legacy as an original division.
Thank you, Bruce. Over to you, Joe.
Okay. I think what's important to realize is that some of our own members not only maintain involvement in the other divisions, but some of them are also involved in leadership roles. And I think building upon that, building upon those relationships, we could get a better understanding of what our division is about and what military psychology is about. It also prevents the opportunity for doing some real collaboration, being it with the international division, looking at human rights, where I would like to see us invite in representation from those divisions to take part in some of our seminars, maybe even regional research symposia, as well as seeing that our membership gets invited to those divisions to also share and educate to what military psychology is all about. I think it's critical in governance that we have representation at all the levels within the American Psychological Association, as well as develop those relationships with people that are in leadership so that we could have those informal discussions, so that we could address address through conversation what might be difficult spots, what might be controversial, or what might be misunderstandings regarding military psychology, or even what the division is all about, who we are and what we do. So those relationships are absolutely critical.
Thank you, Joe. All right. This is our final question for the town hall, and we'll start with you, Joe. What would you say to a clinician, researcher, or practitioner who is thinking about joining Division 19? You've got 2 minutes to convince them.
Okay. In your practice, in your research work, you're going to be working at some point in time with people who have served and their families. You might be working with individuals within your community who are members of the Guard or Reserves, or possibly even those families of those who are on active duty. People who served in the military represent quite a large, significant population as a group, and a group that is experiencing inequities, they're being underserved, and we know about the suicides, we know about the homelessness, mental illness, the incarceration rates, My gosh, it's just absolutely critical that you consider getting engaged to help you understand. And you might have had veterans in your own family or in relationships. Those individuals might be members of the military or have served in the military, but this is such an important group that we need to take care of. It's said by Winston Churchill that when a society does not take care of its veterans, it'll begin to collapse. And maybe those are a strong statement, but it's also emphasizing the importance of taking care of those who have served.
Thank you, Joe. So Bruce, what would you say to a clinician, researcher, or practitioner who is thinking about joining Division 19?
Yeah, I see Division 19 as providing a home or a base camp that won't be found among other divisions. I have found that psychologists who are attracted to the military are mission and solutions focused and willing to take on hard challenges. I always sense a kind of maturity of perspective from military psychologists that I don't necessarily feel among other colleagues. The division offers an ability to connect with like-minded psychologists, share news and lessons learned, and enjoy the energy that comes from working with a team that's focused on a common purpose. I think it's a little too easy to become focused on the small picture, and the division helps broaden that perspective with a bigger picture view by seeing and hearing what the other members are doing. If anyone watching is not already a member, we've been offering the initial year of membership complimentary, so you can try us out at no cost. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bruce. All right, we've concluded the question and answer portion of the town hall. And now I'd like to give each of you the opportunity for any final closing comments that you would like to make. So Bruce, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I just want to reiterate an appreciation, Tatana, for you moderating, and thank you to the team that helped organize and put this on. Joe, I really enjoyed hearing your ideas. I look forward to going forward and working with you. But I just want to say thank you to those who took some time to join the town hall, and please vote. Thank you.
Again, also a note of appreciation for this event. We could have gone on for the next hour. Bruce, I was excited with some of the things that you've had to say and some of the ideas there. I think going forward, we're all one team. And it's very interesting. I'm involved in a profession of psychology at the local and state level, but there's a certain spirit de corps that we have within Division 19, which I find very attractive. It's really a can-do attitude, and it's really coming together. And that's what I look forward to in terms of my continued involvement with Division 19 and looking forward to a great couple of years ahead. Again, thank all of you.
Well, I would like to thank the both of you for your willingness to run for a position of leadership within the Society for Military Psychology and for sharing your views with all of our members tonight. This video will be posted on the Division 19 website along with the statements for all of the candidates that are running for positions this year. Voting for all of our Division 19 candidates begins on April 15th and runs until May 14th. So I encourage all eligible members to cast their ballots when they receive them. This is your opportunity for your voice to be heard. Think about what's important to you as a Division 19 member. Think about what you want the division to be. Think about what you want the division to do, and then vote for the candidate that you feel best exemplifies what you believe. This is your society, and it is an important obligation as a member to be an active participant in selecting our future leaders for the society. So once again, thank you to each of the candidates for your time tonight, and best of luck to you.